Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing my recipe for a whole wheat oil roti or paratha roti. Now in today's video, I'm going to be doing this with half whole wheat flour as well as half regular all-purpose flour. But if you wanted to, you could use all whole wheat flour. I've done it just like that before, and the texture is still perfect and soft and flaky just as you're seeing here. So go ahead and make it as per whatever way that you want and per your own taste. And if you want to see how I put this together, please keep on watching. The first thing you need to do when making this recipe is to go ahead and make the dough. So in my bowl, I have some whole wheat flour, and now I'm going in with some all-purpose flour. Again, I'm using half and half whole wheat flour to all-purpose flour, but if you wanted to, you can use all whole wheat flour and the texture will be exactly the same. It's honestly just a matter of preference on the way that you want to do it. I'm just going to show you guys this way today. So after you go ahead and add that in, you're going to go in with a little bit of baking powder. And as usual, all of my ingredients and measurements will be right down in the description box below. All you have to do is click on that drop box below the video and you can see all of the ingredients and the proper measurements to go along with everything. And before I forget, I'm going to also add in a little bit of salt. The salt is going to help keep the roti soft, and it is also going to help in the preserving process if you do want to keep this in your fridge for a couple of days. Salt helps preserve almost anything, so if you add a little bit in when you're making bread or when you're making rotis or flatbreads, it will have a longer shelf life. And once you mix all of those dry ingredients together, you're going to stream in a few tablespoons of oil. Today I'm using olive oil, but feel free to use any type of oil that you have on hand. Even some butter, ghee, or shortening will work as well. And I'm also going to go in with some very warm water to start mixing my dough. Now you want to keep on adding water until you get a nice, soft, almost sticky dough, so this way you can knead it a little bit and it won't be sticky anymore. Remember, when you're making roti dough, you do not want to make it too hard, because if you do, the end product will be very hard and stiff. And another thing to mention is a lot of you guys always complain that sometimes when you make roti, it does come out hard. One of the reasons is because when you mix in that water, you're not putting in warm enough water. Sometimes you can't really use lukewarm water. You need it to be a little warmer than that. So I recommend putting your sink on to the hottest setting and go ahead and put that in too. You don't want to use boiling water, but you don't want too cold of water either. And as usual, a lot of you guys always ask me how much water I added in. I cannot give you a direct measurement of how much water to put into the dough. I will give a rough estimate down below, but you're honestly just going to have to feel the dough for yourself. One thing that I do recommend is, as you're coming to the end, instead of pouring the water in, go ahead and dip your knuckles into the water, and then you can carry it onto the dough and begin kneading it as I am here. That will yield you a soft product always. Basically, what you're going to want to do to knead the dough is go ahead and keep punching it down. You want to grab up the sides and you want to flip it over. This punching method is the best way when kneading roti or any other types of breads or anything like that, because it doesn't develop the glutens as much and it allows you to get a very soft product in the end. So I'm going to finish kneading this up and then I'll show you guys what it looks like when it is nice and smooth on the top. So after about 2 minutes of kneading and using that punching method, this is the product that you should end up with. Something that's nice and smooth on the top and not too craggly and wrinkly all over the edges. This is exactly what you want. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go ahead and cover it with the damp paper towel, and I'm going to let it rest for maybe 5 minutes. Now this part is totally optional. I just like to do it because I find that letting it rest for just a few minutes allows those glutens to relax, because since we just kneaded it, we did develop those glutens a little bit. And remember, we're trying to get the softest roti that we can. So if you have the time, let it sit for a little bit. But if you don't, I do know that my grandmother, whenever she makes roti, she does not let it sit at all, and her roti always comes out soft. Now, I allowed my roti dough to sit for about 5 to 10 minutes. Again, if you don't have the time and you want to make it right away, feel free to do so as well. But now I'm going to go ahead and break them into small balls. You can go ahead and make them as big or as small as you want. I usually go by the size of my tawa, which is 12 inches. But if you have a bigger tawa or a smaller one, you might want to go ahead and make the balls bigger or smaller, just depending on what you're cooking on. So I'm going to continue ripping these into individual size balls, and then I can show you guys what to do next. So if you guys watched my regular oil roti video, you will realize that the process is exactly the same from here on out. What I'm basically going to do is take one of those balls of dough and I'm going to flour the surface really well, and I'm going to begin to roll it out. Now remember, this is the part where we're going to oil the inside of the dough and fold it up. That's going to give us all of those nice flaky layers when the roti is done. So a few tips that I have for this point in the process, the thinner that you roll it out, the more layers that you will have in the end. And the tighter you roll it when you're oiling it, the more layers you will have in the end. And honestly, when you have more layers, I find that the roti is actually more soft and it is more flaky than if you didn't have all of those layers. So once you get the roti rolled out to your desired thickness, you're going to go ahead and cover it with a few teaspoons of oil. You want to make sure to get that oil spread all around the edges. If you wanted to, you could use a spoon, a brush, to rub it on, but I totally recommend using your hands because those are the best tools to use in the kitchen. And after you add on that oil and you spread it around, you're going to sprinkle on a little bit of flour so this way you could keep those layers nice and separate and you'll get a flaky product. And then basically what you're going to do is you're going to burst it through the middle, then you're going to fold up the edges, and you're going to start to roll it like a cinnamon roll. Now this is the way that my grandmother rolls her roti, and it's not a way that a lot of people roll it, but honestly this I find gives you the most layers when making that roti. But if you have your own way of doing it that your family usually does when they make roti, feel free to do that way as well. Once you roll it up, you're going to go ahead and tuck in that edge, and then you're going to pat it down and you're going to set it aside and begin working on the rest of the balls of dough. So I just showed you the way that my grandmother rolls out her roti whenever she's making oil roti. But now I'm going to show you a few other methods of how people will do it that I've seen before. So basically the same process works here. You're going to dip the piece of dough in some dry flour. You're going to roll it out on your board. Remember, the thinner that you roll this roti out, the more layers you will get and the softer the end product will be. Make sure you keep that surface nice and floured so this way nothing sticks because it'll make for such an easier time as you are rolling it out. And just like the other one, we're going to take a few teaspoons of oil, spread it all over that dough, getting it all around the edges as well, sprinkle on a little flour, and then this time you're only going to burst it halfway through the middle. Now the reason why you want to do that is because we're going to actually roll it up like a cone, as you see I'm doing here. And once you roll it up like a cone, you're going to gather that loose end and you want to wrap it really tight so you get more layers. And then you're going to take that loose piece of dough at the end and you're going to tuck it in the middle. This is a way that I see a lot of people folding their loyas or their dough balls when they make the roti. And honestly, it is a really good way. You do get a lot of layers, but I find that the way that my grandmother does it, you get even more layers. Now, once you tuck that piece of dough in, you're going to take the top of the cone part and you're going to push that in as well. And you get a nice little neat roll-like shape here. So I'm going to set this one aside as well, and I'm going to show you another way on how to roll these out. That was yet another way on how to roll out your loyas or your dough balls. I'm going to show you another way now if those were a little too difficult for you guys. So basically you're going to roll it out with some dried flour, get it nice and thin so you get all of those layers, spread the oil all over around the edges, and then after you put on your oil, you're also going to sprinkle on a little bit of dried flour. And during this step, do not put too much dry flour because if you put too much, it'll actually dry your rotis out as they're cooking. And that's how some of you guys get the hard product as well. So once you get that flour on, you're going to start to fold the roti over itself, just like you're seeing here. Basically, we're going to get it into like a log, and then you're going to go ahead and start folding it in on itself as well. And once you get to the end, you're going to take the top and you're going to stick it in. And again, you're going to get a very neat cinnamon roll looking shape. And just like the other ones, you're going to set it aside, finish working on all of them, and then we can begin our cooking process. So I finished oiling all of my dough balls, and I did not let my roti dough rest at all. Basically, once I finish oiling all of them, I'll start with the first one that I oiled and I'll begin cooking that one. You want to do that because that one has had a chance to rest while the other ones haven't, because you really work the gluten a little bit as you are oiling them as well. But if you have the time, you could allow these to rest for as long as you really want. You could even keep it overnight in the fridge and then cook them the next day if you wanted to. Just make sure that they're wrapped really tightly or put into an airtight container. That'll work just fine. So once you finish oiling all of your dough balls and you're ready to cook, you want to heat up your tawa and then you're going to start rolling out that first dough ball that you had oiled. Now, any of you guys that have been following my channel from basically the beginning will know that I do not like very thick rotis. I find that when the rotis are too thick and too oily, it's just too heavy and you can't really enjoy it as you're eating it. So I like to roll mine on the thinner side, maybe less than 1/8 of an inch. But I know some people like a thicker oil roti because it has a lot of substance to it, and that's what people like to sop up their food with. Do it as per your taste and preferences. Just know that it'll take a little bit longer to cook, and you want to make sure to get those edges really nice and rolled out thin so this way they're not undercooked as you're cooking the roti. Now, once your tawa is nice and hot, you're going to go on with your roti that you rolled out. Remember, I like mine thinner than some people. That's why mine does look a little thin, but do it as per your own taste and preferences. You're going to let it cook for about 20 seconds on that first side. And after cooking for about 20 seconds on that first side and you seeing just a few little air bubbles, you're going to go ahead and flip it over and you're going to oil the side that you flipped it over to. Now I am using some olive oil today. I'm trying to make this just a little healthier to show you guys that there actually is a way to make roti just a little healthier. But if you wanted to, you could use coconut oil, you could use ghee, you could use shortening, or any other types of cooking oils. The possibilities are endless. So as you guys can see, once I oiled that first side, I flipped it over again. And now I am oiling this side. So at this point, once you flip the roti around about 2 times and you see that it has some nice golden brown specks and it's cooked as per your preferences, you're going to take it off the stove and you're going to clap it right away. Now you can clap it in between your hands like I'm doing here to release all of those nice flaky layers, or you can put it in a tight Tupperware dish or a mug and you can shake it around until you release all of those layers. And once you get all of the layers separated, you're finished clapping and you can cook the next one. And just a little quick tip that I have for you guys, it's always best to roll out one roti, put it on the stove, roll out another one, and then when that second one is done being rolled out, you can tend to the one that you have on the stove and you can flip it around, oil it, and finish cooking it. And then when that one's done, you have another one ready to go on the stove. And you just continue that process until all of the dough balls are done. I find that that works for me just because whenever I'm cooking roti, I'm usually by myself in the kitchen. But another way that you could do it is if you have a big counter space. My Auntie Chitra actually takes all of her dough balls and she'll roll them all out. She'll leave them spread out around the counter, so this way she's done rolling and she can just cook them all straight from there. Whatever way works for you guys, go ahead and do it that way. So my whole wheat oil roti is all done. I want to thank all of you guys who've requested this recipe because honestly, it's just a great way to make our traditional Guyanese recipes just a tad healthier. And as you guys can see, it is so flaky, it's so soft, and it's honestly the same thing as a regular all-purpose flour oil roti. It just looks a little bit browner because of that whole wheat flour. So if you enjoyed this recipe, please go ahead and give it a nice big thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you're not subscribed yet, and make sure to leave your awesome comments down below. Again, I hope you guys are staying home. I hope you all are staying safe, and I'll see you guys again in my next video. Bye, everyone.